Wow, it really is a very interesting time of year. And I think one of the things that I've noticed for myself at this time of year, as we get towards the end of a year, much like every Christmas and New Year for me, I'm not really sure if it was really you know, because we get to I remember 12 months ago, in fact, in 2019, I remember thinking, oh, 2020 is going to be such a great year, and if I look back on all the Facebook, posts and the reminders, there's
Yeah.
so many people out there that were like, 2020 is going to be the year 2020. And so, here we are about to go into Christmas. We're about to celebrate, the transition from out of this year. And a lot of people are doing oh my God, I'm so glad this year's over. It's been such a bad year. And I had to stop and ask myself, is it really? Are we not just going to convince ourselves that, oh, it's going to be a better year next year when it's just so unpredictable? So I'm really thrilled by the opportunity today to talk with Steve, who was one of LinkedIn's top 20 voices of 2020. But I'm very fascinated by what I think from I've seen of Steve's story is, his ability to identify an opportunity and make a change and the choices that came as a result of being able to make that change. And Steve, just before we jumped on the call, did say to me, I think we can be presented with so many different opportunities and we can just not take the action. Often it just comes down to taking the action to trust yourself. So Steve, firstly, congratulations on your top 20 voices this year.
Thank you very much. And also congratulations to you too, Kylie.
Thank you. And so I want to start with actually just sharing a little bit about, what it is that you do and the actual big change, right? Because you started out in a career in accounting and financing, and now you're running a company called iFLYflat. That's right?
That's right, yes.
About rewards points. So can you give us how did that happen and what are you now doing?
Oh, how did that happen? Like, it was I probably had it as a hobby about 15 years ago. And how it first started, actually, I reckon the moment the penny dropped was when I started earning enough frequent flyer points from flying to India. So I was in a previous job, which sent me to India to start a new team. And they were generous enough to fly me business class. And I had my first taste of what business class was. Prior to that, I've only had ever flown economy. And of course, you like it, right? Flying business class is a world apart from flying at the back of the plane, where they give you food, they take your jacket and all that stuff. So I started collecting these frequent flyer points. And one day I looked into my account and I realized that I had enough frequent flyer points to fly business class on a holiday myself. And I priced a ticket, which I booked with points, and it's about $4,000. And I realized that I had basically scored $4,000 for nothing. It cost me nothing. It didn't take any effort. And then I thought, actually, well, if I could get enough frequent flyer points, I could fly business class forever. And that's what got me started, realizing there's so much value.
I got to ask, because I'm quite curious. When you talk about how you had the points for business class, my immediate thought, right, is, what would I have to start buying in order to make sure I had enough points? Because, look, God knows how long I've had one of those flyby cards for, right, over the years. And every time you go, oh yeah, we've got to remember to keep using that card. Now, but yet over the years, I think I might have actually cashed it in once. So I've never really been on top of how many points I really had. And, what does one have to, did you ever work out the math on what one technically spends in order to produce that kind of payback?
Yeah. Well, this is stuff that you're buying anyway. So roughly at today's prices and points earning, you got to spend about $250,000 to get enough points to fly business class return to Europe, which that ticket's probably worth about $10,000. But this is not saying that you have to spend it all at once. This could be 1 year, 2 years, 5 years. This could be a combination of your whole family spending, earning points. The magic about frequent flyer points and reward points is someone else is giving it to you basically for free to encourage you to shop with them. So this like an incentive that basically they are paying for. So when you put it all together, you're buying stuff anyway that you're going to buy. And depending on how you pay for it and which credit card or who you shop with, you earn these points for free, and then you can get something awesome. And especially what I love even more about it is no one really wants to pay $10,000 for fly business class if they didn't have to. Because there's other things you can buy. You can probably buy a car for $10,000, but the fact you can fly on something that's worth $10,000 for nothing, that's what gives me the kicks.
And so is part of what you do helping people to understand how to optimize their points? So,
yeah.
Because I imagine that, I mean, even if I just think for myself, right, I'm probably not surprised that you used to be in accounting and finance, because I think to myself, it just seems like a game of maths, right? That if I was to do my budget effectively, then I would be very clear about what I need in order to produce a certain outcome, right?
Yes.
So is that part of what you do for people?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we focus on small business owners for that service because they spend a hell of a lot more money than us individuals. And the magic is, if you're spending your money, you might as well get something for it. And you can probably sometimes double or sometimes triple dip on the same dollar you're spending and get something extra. But if you do it in a specific way, because you know how there's so many different credit cards out there, there's so many different frequent flyer points programs out there. It's not a one solution fits all. And also different people have different travel habits. They might fly solo, they might fly as a couple, with family, and the places they go. So therefore there's all these different scenarios, but basically, like you said, it's actually maths. Once you understand the maths behind it, you'll be like, wow, how this works.
So do you think in a time like this, right, where we're dealing with, let's just say, could this be potentially a hidden opportunity for people? Is there a hidden kind of amount of equity, say, that's available to people that they don't even know about?
Yeah, definitely. Because people are spending money all the time, but sometimes they think they know they're getting points, sometimes they don't. I guess take your flyby example. Is you wouldn't just earn flyby points only. You could be also earning credit card points or bonus points. So you could be double or triple dipping. But there's no good if you just earn a little bit here, a little bit there, because they can never be added up. But if you think of it on a helicopter view, then you can see how you can make some choices on what type of points you want to be earning. So it's completely hidden that these benefits. And I think some people feel like, oh, this is a waste of time, because fair enough, because if you spend $1,000 at Coles every couple of months, you're not going to get enough. But you're not just spending money at Coles, you're spending money at restaurants, you're spending money transport, you're spending money on your car, and all that eventually adds up.
Right. All right. So how does one go from discovering that there is something in this for yourself to then making a change? Because you were, let's just go there, right? So before you were doing this, what were you doing?
Yeah, so I was working at an investment bank called Macquarie Bank in Australia. I worked there for 11 years. And actually very timely, because I actually left around the GFC time. So you would think that when you think about this pandemic, it's sort of the same scenario.
Absolutely.
10 years later.
Yes. So great. Let's talk about that then, because clearly there's a lot of people in this part, in the world where even a lot of organizations are having to flip themselves upside down because of the, costs and taking costs out of the business to survive, and leaving a lot of people out of a job. And it can be a difficult time when you don't feel like you've forced the change to happen, but now you're at the effect of the change, right? But if we go back and look at that time for you, you did so clearly, you made a decision to leave that career. And I do want to acknowledge that, there must have been still some level, obviously there is a bit of a risk when you leave what is typically seen to be a fairly safe, right? Where you've, got a very solid background in accounting and finance, and, you're working for a solid company, decent wage, etc. Then you choose to leave in a crisis. So what happened?
Well, I could get a sense that they were looking to cut costs and reduce headcount. So, and after being there for so long, I felt like I needed something different. So I actually put my hand up for a redundancy. And I remember the time they said, no, there's no list. I said, oh, if there's a redundancy list, can you put my name on it? I'll be cool with that. They said, no, there's no list. Well, lo and behold, a few months later, you get called up, and they said I was the happiest person, because I mean, like, imagine wanting to look for something different and getting into redundancy, and you're solving the problem for them because they needed to get rid of people and reduce their costs. So it happened to be a win-win-win. But I guess what was even more important afterwards is that if you've been working somewhere for so long in certain roles, you don't know what your skills can do because your skills can only be employed in a certain way. So that meant that you had to look into your basic skills and work out what your skills were and see if you could apply those same skills for something completely different. And you'll think that accounting and finance versus reward points and business class are probably completely different worlds, but they actually utilize very similar skill sets.
So did you, when you got what was the timing of the change? When you got the redundancy opportunity, had you already clarified for yourself by that stage okay.
I had no idea what I was doing. I knew I was going to take about months off. So actually 2011 December, that was pretty much now.
Right.
I had no idea what I was going to do. I knew I wanted to take 3, 4, 5 months off jobless and then completely just take a break. And it was actually during that between the 5th and 6th month, that's when I realized that this company, this opportunity, might as well give it a crack.
So I have to ask, is there children, marriage, family? What was the family situation like?
Married right. Wife. So we've been married for 16 years now. Right. No children.
Right.
So I guess my situation was that I didn't necessarily need massive financial needs or so.
Yeah. Right.
So it was worth, and I always, even when I was working in a corporate, I knew I was sort of a little bit different because I knew that there's always some better ways you can do something a bit different. And that's all that mattered because customers are always looking for something different. Done different. I just think of like a coffee shop, how some places there's coffee shops next to each other and each of them draws their own tribe of customers. They're not directly competing with each other. In most cases, they're actually friends, but each have a different groove. And I think as a business owner or as a person, you just have your own groove and you'll find your own place.
Well, given that you've just mentioned having your own groove, so what gave you the groove this year? So, like I've said on previous occasions of, the announcement about the top 20, people know that, my reaction was I'm pretty sure they made a mistake when I got the note. But of course, what we discovered is that it was not just about, pumping out a significant amount of content. There was a number of things at stake. So when you look back on the year for you, what would you say was at the source of you being on the top 20?
I think it was a case because I'm in a travel industry. So even though I play with reward points, but the outcome of reward points is travel. And the entire travel industry has been shut down globally. So the biggest impact ever. I think for this year is a period of reflection. A lot of things I did in my business, you did because you had always done them, and you feared stopping doing something because if you chose to stop doing something and it went wrong, you have yourself to blame because you always think, well, why did I do that? What this pandemic did was it forced things to stop. Means that now you can choose what to restart and choose that selectively. So I think this year for me, with the travel sector down, and actually I love being a small business because you're not tied to any big supplier, you're not tied to the government. So therefore you sort of like have a really free voice because what can they do? They'll shut you down. It's like, I'm just a tiny business. Like, why would we even bother? So I was able to commentate on, say, the big players, what Qantas is doing, what Virgin is doing, what different players are doing, sort of like without fear or favor. And I'll call out what's good and call out what's bad. And I hope that other people will see that actually there's a better practice than this, or that maybe this practice, maybe we should just copy it and then improve on it. And then the next guy will copy what you've done and improve on it. And then eventually we get to the very best practice possible.
So what would have been some of the examples that were you doing certain webinars on LinkedIn, or were you doing video? Like what was the thing that you started doing on LinkedIn?
I always love to share articles and put my take on them. And my methodology is that if I read something interesting, that I read the whole article, then this must be really interesting for other people who are. So it's a bit like a curated list. So that's why I ended up posting so much things on LinkedIn, because I read a lot and I thought this is worth sharing. So I didn't discriminate on what should be shared. Obviously, if something was bad, I wouldn't bother sharing, because I would have probably not have read the whole thing anyway. So things like making people understand that the travel industry is so unique that, like, for example, like agents, they get paid on a commission on flights that are booked. But during the pandemic, every single flight got cancelled, which meant that their commissions were being reversed. So it's a bit like saying you earned a wage last year and someone said, actually, you got to pay back last year's salary because all the work you've done, actually, we made no money. That concept doesn't exist. If you've earned a wage, it's yours forever. But as a travel agent, you actually have to pay it back. So it's about helping, I guess, the LinkedIn people or the audience understand that it's so unique that people have to pay their wages back. And additionally, they're working for free because they're trying to help the customers get refunds. But the customers don't pay you money to get you your refund back. They sort of believe this is what should happen. So completely bizarre industry where you have to do work that you're not paid for, but you're also paying last year's wages back.
Wow, very weird.
So no other industry compares. So it's about drawing attention to that. And also just keeping people's hopes alive, because I think the most important thing we have is hope that things will resume in a way back to normal, back to close to normal. And also to think about what is it that we really care about travel. Are we just traveling because it's something to do? Or are we traveling to meet with our family and friends? And could you recreate that in a different way because you can't travel right now? It doesn't mean that just because you can't be there, you can't get some of that virtually.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And so do you, was your business like largely impacted because of the inability to then convert the points into travel outcomes?
Yeah, hugely impacted. So we book business class on points. So the number one thing we had to do, we had to basically cancel all the flights that we had booked for the past year, and then also follow up the refunds, which is basically, it's like pulling teeth out, basically trying to get refunds and also reconciling them, because the airlines were so swamped with putting the system in reverse, you might get a refund, but it's not right. So you have to then figure out what went wrong and then explain it back to the airline and bits and bobs. So basically, we have been on pause now. So we've basically had no business since March this year.
Wow. And what has that meant for you in terms of survival in the business? Have you got staff and?
Yeah, so we've got a team of 10, and of which 5 is in Australia. So really grateful for JobKeeper for at least just keeping us on life support and helping us survive. And hopefully when travel kicks off, we're here and we can resume to help our customers to travel again. And
is that the plan for you at this stage? Do you see that the timeline's going to be close enough for you to pick up on that?
It will be, I think, sadly, there'll be a gap because my prediction is, even though domestic travel is now fully open, international travel in a leisure type way, I sort of predict probably December next year. which sounds crazy.
Mm.
But if you think about the timing for vaccines to roll out for multiple countries to be deemed safe enough, and for people who can travel out and know they can come back. So right now you can fly out with an exemption, but you don't know when you're coming back.
Is that right?
Because of the capacities in hotel quarantine and flights coming back in. You're allowed to leave, and you have to stay overseas probably for a minimum 3 months, or who knows.
Well, I'm not surprised. I mean, I heard that certainly in the US, they've hit the highest number of fatalities in a single day ever since COVID began. So despite the fact that we might be doing all right and you want to get out, I'm not really sure you'd want to go to any particular country. It's not too many. Well, there's probably plenty you could go to, right? But, when you think about not really being aware of actually how bad it is elsewhere, it certainly does make it a risk. But listen, I do want to come back to this conversation about, in the absence of travel, right? It has put a dent on the opportunity, whether it's international travel or not, right? That, not being able to get away on a holiday, when a holiday would provide certain things. And what does one do? And it's interesting because I was just having this conversation with somebody yesterday about, being able to put in place certain habits around, it is so funny. And I'd never put the two together, but, over the years, I've had a habit where I don't know what it instigated, but at some point I'd always go through this stage of having to rearrange the furniture in every room of my house. My husband would come home one day and go, "Oh, what's happened here? Oh, I don't know, just needed to change things around a bit."
If he came home late at night, he'll be crashing the furniture going, "What the hell? Am I in the right place?"
Funny enough, I've never actually gone back and seen if there's a timeline of pattern to it, right? But I only thought about it yesterday because of this thing that you were just saying, like in the absence of not having travel, one of the things that this friend of mine said, she said, yeah, you just got to change things around a bit at the thing, to give you that experience of change. I went, oh, right. Okay. Is there so on that conversation, did you start doing anything differently for yourself when that was no longer around? Or what do you see are some of the things that we can do to have that experience?
I think the first one is to recognize and understand that travel is off the table, and there's no point just yearning for it. Like it's off. The travel option has been crossed out. And then the next thing, I actually love the elimination of FOMO. So when you could travel previously, you can go anywhere in the world, and you look at magazines and go, "Oh, I could go to Italy, I can Croatia, I can go to New York. Where should I go?" Well, actually, there's so much choice. Therefore, that means that if you go somewhere, you can't go somewhere else. But because you're not allowed to go, but by not having that FOMO, it actually takes a lot of pressure off you, and it helps you realize, why do you travel? Is travel a means to escape your current life? Or are you just looking to be physically in a different space, so therefore you can look around and go, "Wow, isn't this lovely?" And what I discovered, that actually very much so in your backyard or in your state or interstate, there are places where you could go that you would not even imagine you were still in Australia. And I think that can provide exactly the same type of bewilderment, sort of physical immersion that you normally would go overseas for. I've been to some parks that I've never been to near my home, which is probably 20 minutes. And I thought, wow, where the hell am I? And that is the exact feeling I would have got if I went traveling.
Right.
But without the plane, without the hotels. Yeah.
Yeah. So what you're saying is there are plenty of opportunities to potentially look at in our own backyard that we don't normally go to because it's just automatic that we would take a trip somewhere else, which is, absolutely spot on. I mean, I can't.
But also to drill down to exactly why you choose to travel. Because actually I refer to this, I watched Jerry Seinfeld in New York last year, actually, and he did stand up. And also I love Jerry Seinfeld, seeing him stand up. One of the funniest jokes he's told was that people just cannot sit still for too long. So you're at home, you go, "Oh, let's go out." You go to a coffee shop, "Let's go here." You go to the beach, let's go there. No one can be content because they just want to keep moving their bum from A to B to C to D. So as long as you can keep doing that, I would say even whether you travel, you don't travel, it gives you exactly the same feeling. You just cannot sit, I reckon, for more than 2 hours in one spot.
All right. So I think I missed the point on that one. So, okay. So if it is that travel is helpful because we as humans can't sit still.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. So in the absence of no travel, what do we got to, you said look for the thing that we escape from. Is that right? Yeah, right. Well, hey, let's get really honest about that one, shall we, Steve? Because my last trip, well, I had one trip recently, I think to Bali, but my trip's always been escape, to be honest. You know, I think if I look at one of the most notable ones for me, Steve, was back in 2017. I'd finished facilitating a workshop. It was a 12-hour day, right? The night before, I was up around the clock finishing all of my material. We had a day in Kirribilli. We had like 50 women, and it was a workshop on values and purpose and all that, right? I came home that night. I didn't get home till about 8 o'clock. And I walked in the door and no one was home. So I got 3 kids and a husband, right? I walked in the door and the house was an absolute bomb. Like it was like Hiroshima. I walked in the door absolutely shattered. And as I walked in and I'm looking around, I can't, like the immediate, I was not kind, Steve. Yeah. I was not the kind human being. I was not I'd been out all day training these ladies in how to be compassionate about yourself and, blah, blah, blah. And I walked in the door and I was ropeable. And I got to where my lounge room is, close to my kitchen. And I just stopped, right? And I went, you know what? Screw this. I'm not even going to deal with this. I'm just going to park myself on the couch. I sat myself in front of a film. I fell asleep, right? Yeah. That was the Saturday night. Monday morning, I went to the gym, bumped into a girlfriend of mine who was in between jobs, right? And, what are you doing here? Oh, I'm in between jobs. Oh, you must be bored. She says, actually, I'm thinking about going to New York. Hey, can I come? She's like, really? And I said, yes. I said, I'm out of here, man. I said, I'm so done with this shit. 2 weeks later, we were on a plane to New York, 10 days. And I tell you, Steve, for me, that is perfect example of my history with travel. Get me out of here. I'm done with you lot, So it was a miracle. Now, it was a miracle moment for me in many reasons, but, I was the first real trip I'd had for a long time, solo, without children. So it wasn't just the fact that it was a holiday. It was like, oh my God, for the first time I could actually go to the bathroom and not feel like I had to deal with anybody else's bullshit. And thankfully I went with a girlfriend who loved to plan. So I didn't even have to make any decisions. Awesome. I didn't have to decide on where to go. She just handled everything, right? But of course, whilst I'm there, I had this awakening called, oh my God, I've spent my entire life just not, just giving myself to everybody else. But I was like, no, you did that. Like you need to take responsibility for that. Like if you keep giving and letting them do away with this, you got to, Now, I don't know, Steve, but I'm kind of a bit lost about how does one recreate How am I going to recreate that experience except go sit in a massage parlor and hope to God I'm going to have some awakening?
Well, I think the core of that was the fact is you could do something spontaneous. So this is completely unplanned. You bumped into your girlfriend. You said, let's go to New York. But I reckon the exact same thing can be. You could just go to Manly or something and stay at a hotel. What's to say that you can't stay at any hotel in your own city?
Yes.
That you have to hop on a plane to go somewhere else. I reckon you should stay in the same hotel in the same suburb. And you could live like 6-minute walk from home. And it'll feel completely different because your environment's different.
Yes. Yeah. Well, funny you do say that. Actually, about a month ago, I did put a post in Facebook going, all right, I need accommodation. I need an escape so I can actually work in private without 3 kids distracting me all the time. I did blessed with a couple of people who did some house sharing and stuff. But you're absolutely right, and I think it's interesting you say this because I think what I'm now present to, Steve, is the opportunity that we have to start to be a little bit more creative.
Yeah.
You know, like to do the thinking more than what we've done in the past. So rather than just default to going and doing something, stop and using our brain to come up with something.
Yeah, be creative. Obviously, I don't want to kill the industry by getting people not to travel.
Of course not.
But this is just about thinking, how do you create something similar without the traditional paths of course, travel was traditional. You just book a ticket and you're off and you can get all the stuff that you were seeking. But because you can't travel, you can still get all the stuff you're seeking just by thinking about, you know, you can stay in a hotel in Bondi if you want to hang around the beach. There's actually so many places that you can go that you can just drive to, walk to, catch a bus to. There's nothing. I think it's about breaking that bond to why do you have to be on a plane to stay in a hotel? And even if, say, you went to stay in a hotel in Bondi, it doesn't mean you have to take calls from your family.
True.
Just because they're literally just down the road.
Very true. Sorry, I'm actually overseas on a different time zone.
Yeah.
Phone off. Oh my goodness. Right, Steve, this has been absolutely fabulous. One thing I do want to end on, which I often do with people, is just to ask their, you know, it's just to finish a sentence about their view as a leader. And, you know, technically we really are talking about, you know, people having a, you know, an interest to pursue something that they're really passionate about and to forward that and create it, right? So if you complete the sentence for me, a leader is someone who...
Someone who opens doors and removes roadblocks. Because I believe a leader is that someone who's leading someone down a path, but you got to create the optimal conditions for your team. And even as a leader, for your family just to do their thing. And the leader has power because they can negotiate with all the roadblocks to create an opening, whereas your team may not be able to or may not be listened to. So there is a hierarchy and a motivation to do that. But this is something which I learned very early on in my career, that by someone who's really high up in the company, the bank I was working with, and he said, just come to me. If there's any roadblocks, come to me and I'll kick the doors down so you can get on and do your job.
Right, right.
And this is basically, he said, this is why you've been hired. It's like, I'm not here to do your job, but I can make sure that you can do your job unimpeded. And that could be from, you know, difficult customers or from other staff members. You just want to make sure that everyone can just get on and do the job they were here for. That because nowadays it's all about everyone chooses to work for you. They don't work for you because they have to. They choose to work for you. They believe in the vision that your company's here, and they believe in helping your customers achieve whatever. So if you smooth the path to let them get on with your day, remove frustrations like in IT and stuff like that or whatever, then they're doing their best job. And then as a leader, well, you don't have to do anything. Or except to kick the doors down. But no, that's only once in a while. Yeah.
Steve, thanks so much for joining me today. There's so much wonderful stuff. I think I'm so fascinated by this new view that certainly I think you've presented today, which is ultimately about being able to, you know, start to be a little bit more creative in the way that we choose to, you know, to do things and to live our life. And, you know, like you say, it's not at the effect of certainly not opening the doors again to travel, but providing that insight, I think is fabulous. And I do think as business owners and as humans, we have an opportunity here to probably start to get back to some of the basics in some respects. So thank you for joining me today.
Lovely. Love to chat.
Thanks. And I do wish you all the best, and hopefully it does recover a lot quicker than what, December next year.
Oh yeah. Hopeful.